Hello everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we're going to explore a gripping and emotional story about a family whose peaceful life is suddenly shattered by danger lurking in the shadows. What begins as a shocking accident slowly unfolds into a tense investigation, exposing betrayal, hidden hatred, and a truth no one expected. This is a journey through fear, resilience, and the strength of family when faced with the unthinkable. If you find this story engaging, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. Now, let's get into the story. Today's story follows Da and his family, whose quiet, ordinary life is suddenly shattered by a danger hiding right in the shadows. What begins as a terrifying incident quickly turns into a tense chase that unfolds inside Da's own home. In the end, Tomet fails to carry out his plan and vanishes into the night. Fearing for the safety of his wife, Huyen, and their young daughter, Maya, Da makes a decision that changes everything. Early the next morning, he reports the entire incident to the police. From that moment on, an urgent investigation begins, one that eventually leads to Tomet's arrest. But as the truth slowly comes to light, it shocks everyone involved. The person secretly manipulating events from behind the scenes is someone Da never expected. His ex-wife, Tieu, driven by years of buried resentment and jealousy. This story is a breathtaking journey through fear, doubt, and revelation. It shows the heavy price of hatred while delivering a powerful message about courage, protecting family, and the ultimate triumph of justice. If you find this story gripping and emotionally engaging, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any upcoming stories. Your support is our greatest motivation to keep bringing you more compelling content. Thank you for watching, and now, let's begin. That night, Da could hardly sleep. The small rented room felt suffocatingly quiet. The silence was broken only by the steady ticking of the wall clock, each second sounding louder than the last, as if it were reminding him that he was still alive, that the accident from the previous afternoon had really happened, and that it had not been some horrible nightmare. Huyen lay on a folding chair near the window. Her eyes were wide open, fixed on the ceiling. The pale color of her face still carried the marks of fear. Just 1 second slower. Just one wrong movement of the steering wheel, and the car would have plunged straight down the concrete slope, ending everything in an instant. At first, both of them tried to convince themselves that it had been nothing more than an accident. An old car breaking down wasn't unusual. Things like that happened all the time. They told themselves that fate had simply played a cruel joke. But that fragile sense of comfort disappeared the moment the mechanic crawled out from under the vehicle. He frowned, wiped his hands on a rag, and spoke words that instantly froze the blood in Da's veins. The brake oil hose, he said, hadn't worn out. It had been cut cleanly, too cleanly, as if someone had done it on purpose. Da felt a cold chill run down his spine. Beside him, Huyen suddenly burst into tears. Not because of physical pain, but because of the terrifying realization that they had come within inches of death. This wasn't bad luck. This was intent. That night, they sat facing each other in silence. No words were needed. The same questions echoed in both of their minds, growing heavier with every passing minute. Who would do this? And why would someone want them dead? The next morning, a light rain fell from the sky. Thin streams of water slid down the windshield, blurring the view ahead. like an extension of the heavy emotions weighing on their hearts. Da drove slowly toward the district police station. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Every sound outside made him tense. Every passing motorbike felt like a threat. Huyen sat beside him, her eyes constantly scanning the streets. At every corner, she felt as though someone might be watching them, waiting for the right moment to strike again. When they finally stepped into the reception office, Da took a deep breath. He knew that once he crossed this threshold, the past he had tried so hard to bury would be dragged back into the light. Lieutenant Colonel Min, the officer assigned to receive their report, had a calm voice and sharp, observant eyes. He listened carefully as Da explained everything, never interrupting, occasionally nodding while taking notes. But when Da mentioned the cut brake hose, Min's expression changed. His gaze hardened slightly, and the atmosphere in the room grew more serious. Min began asking detailed questions. The time of the accident, the exact location, who might have had access to the car, and finally, questions about Da's personal relationships, past conflicts, business disputes, unresolved grudges. Da hesitated. For a brief moment, he considered keeping the name locked inside his chest. But deep down, he already knew the answer. The name had surfaced in his mind from the very beginning, even if he hadn't wanted to say it out loud. Tomat, Da finally said. Tomat was a former business partner, once close, once full of shared dreams and ambitions. But everything had changed when their goals no longer aligned. Their partnership ended badly, with harsh words, broken trust, and resentment that neither of them ever truly let go of. Lieutenant Colonel Min didn't jump to conclusions. He simply noted the name and said that all possibilities would be investigated. Before dismissing them, he advised Da and Huyen to avoid traveling alone and to stay in close contact with the police. The investigation moved quickly. On a bright afternoon, Tomat was summoned for questioning. Contrary to what Da expected, Tomat appeared unusually calm. He wore a neat suit and spoke clearly. He answered every question without hesitation and avoided nothing. Yes, he admitted, there had been conflicts with Da in the past, serious ones. But that was all behind him now, he claimed. He said he wasn't foolish enough to destroy his own life over old grudges that no longer mattered. What unsettled the investigators most was Tomat's alibi. It was almost perfect. Security cameras placed him at a meeting far from the scene at the exact time the brake hose was cut. Receipts confirmed his location. Witnesses backed up his story. Every timeline aligned neatly. Though his motive seemed obvious, every piece of evidence pointed away from him. The case stalled. Days passed, and Da's confidence began to crumble. Had he accused the wrong person? Was he letting old resentment cloud his judgment? Or was the real mastermind watching from the shadows, quietly mocking them all? Just as the investigation seemed to reach a dead end, a seemingly minor detail resurfaced, one that would change everything. In a supplemental statement, Huyen recalled something she hadn't thought was important at the time. On the night before the accident, she remembered seeing a woman standing near their car in the parking lot. It was dark. The woman wore a hat. Huyen hadn't paid much attention, assuming she was simply waiting for someone. But now, looking back, something about that figure felt strangely familiar. Lieutenant Colonel Min immediately ordered a full review of all security footage from the area. The images were blurry, but clear enough to show a middle-aged woman wearing a mask, appearing at precisely the suspicious time. And as investigators began narrowing down the list of women with direct connections to Da, the room fell silent. Because one name stood out above all the others. And when Da heard it, his heart clenched tightly in his chest. It was the one name he had never wanted to say. The name was Tieu, Da's ex-wife. When Lieutenant Colonel Min spoke her name, the room seemed to grow colder. Da felt as if something heavy had tightened around his chest. It wasn't that he believed Tieu was incapable of something like this. It was that he couldn't bear the thought of it being true. Their marriage had lasted nearly 10 years. It began with love, hope, and shared dreams. But over time, it dissolved into constant arguments, legal disputes, and wounds that never truly healed. The divorce was long, painful, and bitter. When it was finally over, Tieu disappeared from his life completely. New phone number, new address, no contact, no explanations. Da had always assumed that was her way of moving on. But the investigation revealed a very different truth. Tieu had never really vanished. She had been watching from a distance, quietly tracking Da's life, where he went, who he met, and most importantly, when Huyen entered the picture, recovered data from an old phone showed that Tieu had been in contact with Tomat for a long time, even after Da and Tomat's business partnership ended. At first, their conversations were casual, mostly about work and old connections. But slowly, the tone changed. The messages became darker, filled with bitterness, resentment, and anger directed squarely at Da. When Tieu was summoned for questioning, she appeared exhausted and distant. Her eyes were hollow, her movements stiff. She denied everything at first, insisting that she was just a woman trying to rebuild her life after a painful breakup. She claimed she had no reason to hurt anyone and that she wanted nothing to do with Da anymore. But evidence doesn't care about words. Security camera footage placed her near the parking lot on the night before the accident. Movement records showed her traveling across the city at suspicious times. Deleted messages, once thought to be gone forever, were restored, revealing conversations that painted a very different picture from the one she tried to present. As the walls closed in, her composure began to crack. Finally, in the cold, silent interrogation room, Tieu broke down. Tears streamed down her face as years of suppressed emotion poured out all at once. She admitted that she was behind it all, that she had never accepted Da moving on, never accepted him starting a new life, building happiness with someone else. Every glimpse of Da's peaceful life, she said, felt like salt rubbed into an open wound. Every smile she saw on his face fueled her resentment. In her mind, he didn't deserve to be happy, not after everything she believed she had lost. Through sobs, Tieu claimed she never intended for things to go that far. She said she only wanted to scare him, to make him feel the same fear, insecurity, and helplessness she had carried for years. She wanted him to look over his shoulder, to question his safety, to feel unsettled in his own life. According to her confession, Tomat had not acted directly. He had provided information, schedules, and helped her gain access to the car. He knew what she was planning, but he never stopped her. That silence made him an accomplice. When the truth finally surfaced, every missing piece fell into place. Tomat was held accountable for his role in assisting and concealing information. Tieu, as the mastermind behind the plan, faced the full consequences of her actions. In the courtroom, Da sat quietly as everything unfolded. When he looked at the woman who had once been his wife, he felt no anger, no satisfaction, only a deep exhaustion, and regret for a past that had been slowly corroded by unresolved emotions. Hatred, he realized, had already destroyed enough. Huyen sat beside him, her hand gently holding his. That simple touch grounded him, pulling him back into the present so he wouldn't be swallowed by memories of what had once been. When the trial ended and the courtroom emptied, Da felt as though a heavy chapter of his life had finally closed. Not with relief, but with clarity. The most terrifying thing, he understood, was not the accident that nearly took their lives. It was how hatred could blind a person so completely. How unresolved pain, left to grow in silence, could twist into something capable of destroying lives. Sometime later, on a gentle rainy afternoon, Da and Huyen stood by the window of their old rented room. Outside, the city lights flickered on, one by one, reflecting softly against the wet streets. The rain was still falling, but it no longer felt heavy. Da knew the wounds would take time to heal. Some scars never truly disappeared, but at least they had faced the truth. At least the fear no longer lived in the shadows. And in that quiet moment, he finally understood something he had never fully grasped before. Sometimes, to move forward, you must walk through darkness. You must face pain, accept loss, and confront the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it is. Only then can you find the light for yourself. Thank you for watching. Take care, and see you in the next story. Bye-bye. English, 140-word summary, with an open ending. Da and his family live a quiet life until a terrifying accident
Trong
nearly
câu
takes
chuyện
their
cảm động
lives.
này, Huyền đoàn tụ
What
với
first
đệ
seems like
sau nhiều
bad
tháng
luck
xa cách.
soon
Mối
turns
dây
into
liên kết
something
của họ
far
được
darker
củng cố
when
bởi
evidence
sự vắng mặt
reveals the
và
car was
tình yêu bền vững.
sabotaged.
Cùng nhau, họ
As
tập
fear
trung chăm
takes
sóc cô
over,
gái Maya,
Da
xây
reports
dựng một
everything
mái
to
ấm
the
an
police,
toàn và tràn đầy yêu thương.
triggering a tense
Đồng
investigation
thời, hỗ trợ
filled
Tử
with
Vi,
suspicion
một cô gái
and
trẻ
buried
đang đối mặt
secrets.
với khó khăn. Những
A
khoảnh khắc
former
gia đình
business
chuẩn
partner
bị bữa ăn,
becomes the prime suspect,
dựng lên một cấu trúc
but
cho
solid
Maya
alibis
và chia
raise
sẻ
new
tiếng cười.
doubts. Just when the case appears
Phản
to
ánh tình
stall,
yêu sâu sắc
a
và
small
sự quan tâm
detail
lẫn nhau trong gia
uncovers a
đình.
hidden
Tuy
figure
nhiên,
from Da's past.
sự bình yên của họ gián
The
đoạn
truth
khi những kẻ
reveals
xâm
how
nhập xuất hiện,
unresolved hatred
tìm
and
kiếm Tử
jealousy
Vi và
can
làm nổi bật
slowly
sự
turn
mong manh
into something
và những nguy
dangerous
hiểm mà họ
and
phải đối mặt.
destructive.
Những căng thẳng,
As
bất
justice
định,
finally comes to
Huyền và Đệ
light,
lên kế hoạch cho một
Da
tương
is
lai an
left
toàn hơn.
facing not only
Quyết
the
định trở về miền
aftermath of
Bắc
the crime,
để gần gũi hơn với
but
gia
the
đình và
emotional
mang lại sự
scars
ổn
it
định
leaves
cho Maya.
behind.
Qua những thử
Yet
thách,
one
mối đe
question
dọa
still
và những
lingers. Can the
kết
past
nối chân
ever
thành,
truly be
câu
left
chuyện ca ngợi
behind?
sức mạnh tình yêu,
Or does it
gia đình
always
và
find
sự
a way
kiên cường
back?
trong công việc, tạo dựng hy vọng và an toàn.